I'm almost 10 years older than my youngest brother, who's my business partner. And so we didn't get to grow up, kind of, hanging out with each other.
Right.
I mean, I was like, out of the house at
Yeah.
18.
Right.
He was like in third grade.
Yeah,
Right.
right. Yeah.
But what we ended up finding out later on as we started this is that we both independently, we were both into like, model rockets, but not just like, shooting them vertically. No, we both essentially, took PVC pipes and essentially made like bazookas to like
Next level.
yeah, to shoot like model rockets like across, like fields and things. I didn't know that he had done that. He didn't know that I had
No
done
way.
that. So it was almost like the universe was preparing for this moment.
Welcome to Extraordinary Stories. I'm your host, Forbes Shannon, and with me.
Christine Butler.
And today we have in studio an awesome entrepreneur who has now returned to Arizona. And we're so excited to have you in the Extraordinary Collaborative. And we're excited to hear about your new company, Crewse Industries, the one and only LeGrand Crewse.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thanks for being here. So we were just kind of talking about like fun little hobbies, you're working on your home, like when it comes to designing your life, like how important, like how much time and energy do you think you spend on that?
Oh, to be honest, I've been kind of a workaholic for a very long time. And so I tend to actually design my life around efficiency and trying to, maximize the amount of time I have for the things that I'm into or want to do. Right now, yes, I'm like remodeling a home, but really it's to sell it to ultimately be able to get either as close as possible to the office to like eliminate my commute or to be more flexible and like where I could live depending on where things go with the business.
Very cool.
So I sense efficiency is like a top tier value that you have in your life.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I don't like spending time in things that are not productive and, sitting around in traffic. It tends to not be that way.
Yeah.
Although with podcasts and audiobooks, it's a little more productive.
Sure. Yeah. Or Waymo,
Or Waymo. I guess that's the other one.
Very
Yeah.
true.
Well, and then speaking of being intentional with your time, you were nominated by Christine. How do you know Christine?
So actually met her at a networking function just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And then in between another networking function. And it was like, oh, okay, well, this is, I guess, maybe meant to be.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you being on. When I met you, you told the most extraordinary stories about your business. Can we get into that and tell us what you do?
So currently Crewse Industries is a company I founded with my little brother. So I came back to Arizona to do that about a year and a half ago. And we are in the defense space, so a defense tech company. And specifically, we're making miniature missiles to take out drones.
Cool.
So
That's intense.
yeah.
Miniature.
it
So
is.
how miniature are they?
So essentially, if you stack like a couple of water bottles on top of each other, it's about like that, about 18 inches in length and about 2 inches in diameter. So 3 pounds, something you can just kind of hold in your hand.
Were you a bottle rocket kid?
Oh my gosh. So, this is the funny story is that, so I'm almost 10 years older than my youngest brother, who's my business partner. And so we didn't get to grow up, kind of, hanging out with each other.
Right.
I mean, I was like, out of the house at 18.
Yeah.
He was like in third grade.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But what we ended up finding out later on as we started this is that we both independently, we were both into like, model rockets, but not just like, shooting them vertically. No, we both essentially, took PVC pipes and essentially made like bazookas to like
Next level.
yeah, to shoot like model rockets like across, like fields and things. I didn't know that he had done that. He didn't know that I had
No
done
way.
that. So it was almost like the universe was preparing for this moment.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
That is
super
so
cool.
funny.
Yeah.
I grew up in a house with nothing but girls. So like that just sounds fun to me.
See, and I was in a house with only boys. I was the oldest of four. So, besides the rockets, there's a lot of fighting and, brawling and
Making bazookas and
making bazookas and,
Norm.
being a pyro and, all the other things that boys get into. So,
Okay, well, clearly it's paid off.
well, that's what I'm hoping. So that's, now I'm like, we'll put it to good use. So.
Yeah.
So is there a connection to why you came back to Arizona with like our, burgeoning aerospace industry that we have here?
Yeah. So one of the things that I didn't know, I don't come from the defense world, and I had no idea until I kind of came back here. And certainly, once I engaged with my brother and trying to understand the landscape, that it is like a super robust ecosystem on the defense side here.
Yeah.
Not only do you have these like large, defense primes, but now you have all the different pieces coming together. The TSMC factory is a great one. I mean,
Absolutely.
we're literally sourcing chips right now that
Yep.
are made by TSMC,
Mhm.
and there's a long history, especially in the missile side of things,
Mhm.
with Raytheon,
Right.
down south,
Mhm.
and so you end up having a lot of talent here as
Yeah.
well,
Mhm.
and that's I think the key in a business like this is you not just that ecosystem of manufacturing or companies that make different components or products, but it's actually the talent that gets you
Mhm.
there. That's probably the
Mhm.
most important thing.
We also had, the mayor of Yuma, Doug Nichols, on the podcast, and they're building a rocket launch pad in Yuma. Not
Mhm.
necessarily for the rocket launching, but because of all of the stuff that goes with it. Because if you're gonna launch rockets there, you need to make rockets there,
Yep.
you know? And so it is really like how you said the ecosystem, like that's how you bring the talent in and stuff like that. So, you know, as someone who plugs in to an ecosystem, like how do you introduce yourself?
So, you know, in this case, we're very fortunate. We actually participated about a year ago in an accelerator. It was actually the first cohort that they had here, which was sponsored by Defense Innovation Unit. So this is a Department of War entity, and so, anyways, this got stood up as here in downtown Phoenix. And so, what was really cool is coming in, we right away got to meet a lot of other defense tech startups in the space. But
Yeah.
then we
Mhm.
also got access to folks from Honeywell and
Right.
from Raytheon or
Mhm.
different companies that were already here. So again, very fortunate that just from a timing standpoint that it
Mhm.
was like coming in saying yes we're going to do this and then instantly getting kind of plugged into everybody that's in the space out here.
Mm. Mhm. So missiles that shoot down drones.
Yes.
I'm curious what the metaphor is to
Mhm.
like your life.
Oh man, there's got to be one there, right? I think the biggest thing, if you think about drones, this is a new threat. This is a new,
Mhm.
a new form of warfare,
Right.
right? That didn't exist, and so what you're seeing right now is, this scramble of trying to figure out which technologies to counter, this new threat. And so, I don't know if I think, back. Like everybody's lives, you end up having new threats and new, surprises and things that
Yeah.
you don't know how to maybe deal with challenges. And one of the things that I think has always drawn me certainly to entrepreneurship is problem solving.
Yeah.
Mm.
You have to be a glutton for punishment,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and so I think having a problem, being creative, trying to figure out a new solution, like that's what drives me. And in
Mm.
fact, even my previous business, it was something that really drove me. And with this, it's like this new novel problem, and so something I'm attracted to. And I
Mhm.
think, I don't want to say I'm attracted to problems, but I guess if I think back on my life, there may be something to
Some
that.
metaphor there,
Yeah, yeah.
maybe.
So, but again, just naturally, I like being a problem solver. It's something that motivates me and stimulates me for sure.
Well, I wonder too if, being the oldest brother, you know, if there was kind of this value that's been a red thread in your life of like being a protector.
Yeah. Yeah, that's certainly I think one aspect, very protective of the younger brothers, one that was just close to my age, not so much. He could handle himself.
Yeah, right.
But no, and even this business being a family affair,
Yeah.
this
Mhm.
is something that my little brother and I mean we talked about this for a couple years before we started it. And I really saw, his desire to kind of want to get out there, be an entrepreneur, and he really wanted to make a difference. He was working for a really big, large defense prime,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and he felt that he really didn't have that impact in
Yeah.
in making something for the end user, in this case, the soldier or the grunt, right? And so when I decided to join forces with him, part of that was sure the problem solving, drones, making missiles. I mean, hell, that sounds pretty cool.
That's
Yeah.
pretty
I
cool.
was like, all right, that's awesome. But more than anything, I think is really the love for my brother and
Mhm.
Mhm.
wanting to help him and see him grow in his career and also to achieve the things that he wants to. And I care deeply about that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. What about you? Like, you have major goals. Obviously, you have a missile company, right?
Yeah.
What does it look like in the next 5 years with that industry just booming?
Yeah.
Where do you see your company going?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the problem today is these small drones. Tomorrow, it's probably going to be something else.
Yeah.
The one thing with warfare in particular is, it's always evolving, and especially right now when there's active conflicts. Right,
Yeah.
there's war in
Mhm.
Europe, there's war in the Middle East,
Yeah.
and so you're going to see a lot of iteration and And so I think, it's tough to say. I mean, will we be doing, anti-drone missiles in 5 years?
Right.
Maybe, maybe not. But ultimately, I think, in building a successful company, especially a startup, you have to be willing to kind of, take things as they come and, pivot and adjust,
Mhm.
as those
Yeah.
opportunities arise.
Yeah.
It's, one of the things that I talk to, my employees about, which is like, we have to be survivors. Like
Yeah.
that's at the end of the day.
That's a
And
good
so
point.
so we think we know what we're going to do.
Right.
So I'd love to tell you that, hey, we're going to be like one of the, outside of the maybe the defense primes, the biggest, missile manufacturers and providers out
Yeah.
there.
Mhm.
But who knows? Maybe we become a drone company. Maybe
Exactly.
we,
Yeah.
build
Yeah.
something else. But ultimately, I think it's having that flexibility and building an organization that can react quickly.
Yeah.
I think what I find interesting about that is like, from my background as like a writer, like the thing that I'll tell people who want to be a writer is I'm like, you have to be so willing to just throw everything out.
Mhm.
You got to be able to write more pages and throw them away than most people will write because you don't know where the story's going to go.
Yep.
And, I'm curious, like, how does, because for a lot of people, that's frustrating. It's like, well, what do you mean in 5 years, what I'm building right now could be obsolete? Like, where does that mentality, that willingness, that adaptability come from?
Yeah. Again, I think it's one of those things you just have to be willing, to let go and to, it's the whole sunk cost, fallacy,
Mhm.
right? It's
Right.
like, hey, just because, I spent the last 6 months doing this, if it's not working, you got to understand when to cut your losses and go. And I think that's actually one of the most important things that I've learned in my, entrepreneurship journey and thinking back to, other businesses and other, situations. Um, a lot of times knowing when to hang up the
Yeah.
Yeah.
keys there and go now like that chapter's done and move
Mhm.
on and I think in my past I've maybe held on a bit too long in various ways but ultimately you know part of my upbringing as well is my father was an entrepreneur and I got to
Okay.
see that firsthand
Yeah.
starting as a teen and seeing that journey and those pivots and the way that his business evolved
Yeah.
and to this day even.
So, was there something like either personally or professionally that like you were hanging on to and then you finally let go? And what was the feeling when you let it go?
Yeah, so I think back to the first business I started, which was actually here in Arizona before I moved away for a few years to pursue other business opportunities. And like I think a lot of small business owners, I built this business and run it for 5 or 6 years. It was it was small. I had 8, 9 employees. We were doing few million dollars of revenue, but it was kind of like the ceiling. And I
Mm,
realized at some point that ceiling was it was me. I was the one holding
yeah.
things back because I wanted this kinda control, I wanted to, um, I wanted to control every aspect, and ultimately, one of the lessons that I learned and when I really kind of was willing to let go is I had the opportunity to start, new business with some business partners, and that was really the first time where I started to trust others,
Oh,
which doesn't always work,
okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
but at least starting to delegate authority and starting to, understand that, hey, you gotta really trust your people,
Yeah.
if you want to grow an organization, and ultimately you get a lot more value out of that.
Mm,
And so that was one thing that I learned. And ultimately, when I think of, I had this one business, I did okay for a while, but when I transitioned, got some business partners willing to, trust others and empower those people, that next business took off and,
yeah.
and exploded in a way
Mhm.
that, I think even at the time I did not anticipate.
Mm,
Yeah. That's wild to think about something blowing up bigger than you anticipate for, right? And a lot of people I think avoid the unknown so much so that they don't get to anticipate that blowing up of a business or whatever concept you have. I love the unknown because in the unknown is where you have this a little bit of chaos, right? But it's like the fun, like you don't know what's gonna happen, but you're gonna trust yourself and dive in anyways. Are you more on the side of like safety or like dive into the chaos and see what
mm.
happens?
Yeah, I think maybe it depends on the day, but
Okay.
but I think I think I have a natural tendency to invite, I guess, that chaos,
Mhm.
and I gotta be careful how I say that.
Yeah.
But essentially, it's I think You know, when you think of fear, it is usually fear of unknown, but it's an irrational fear,
Right.
right? Because I mean, there is no future. There's the now. There's the present,
Yeah.
Yes.
and
Yeah.
ultimately, you know, that's I think one of the things that I've certainly changed about myself over time is to learn how to be more present. And the
Mhm.
less I think about this future, which doesn't exist,
Yeah.
the less scary it is
Yeah.
to attack the
How do you
unknown.
center into the now? How do you remain in the now?
I think, I think it goes back to, certainly, there's a lot of YouTube videos and things that I've watched over the years. But ultimately, it's about embracing, the fact that this is a journey. And I think about, my past experiences, and you always think that it's, when I achieve this, or when,
Yeah.
hey, we get a certain amount of revenue, when I sell the company, when, I get the house, I get the car, the girl, whatever it is. And
Mhm.
ultimately, if you look back, my fondest memories are always, it was the journey. It was this
Exactly.
moment with, people with this struggle. And so I recognize that now. And so that's how I choose to live my life, is now appreciate the moments, as they happen, because I know that those are going to be the special times that I
Right.
remember.
And
Yeah.
otherwise they turn into the ceiling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
it.
Not the pursuit of pleasure, but pleasure in the pursuit.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and learning how to appreciate that, honestly, that's something, I wish I was in my 20s and I would have figured that out.
But that's the way it was supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
Because
That's
now you
exactly
can
it.
appreciate that
That's
and have a lot
exactly
of
it.
grace for your younger self.
It
That's
is
exactly
cool, like, for me when I'm teaching something, uh, that's when I see my progress. Because like, it's hard
Mhm.
to see your own progress just as is, right? But then you're explaining something complex that you do, and people are like, "Wow, like, you," it's like, "Yeah, all right, I really did figure this out," Like, in the moment, I was frustrated, and I was like, "All right, I just gotta figure out how to do this," right? But then you look back on it, and you realize, like, "Okay, I fixed this problem," So, like, when it comes to problem solving, I guess what I'm saying is, like, that to me is a skill that's, agnostic, in the sense of, like, with the right problem solving mindset, I can figure out now with the age of AI, like, I can figure out how to, like, code something. I can figure out, you can watch enough YouTube videos and build a podcast studio,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's just, I'm curious, where is the balance between, like, who you are and your mindset versus, like, what you can do and, like, skill set?
Mm. I think going back to one of the things you mentioned right now, and this is actually, maybe get on a little tangent here on, the education system, and really kind of how I was brought up. And, I don't know, I went to public school, so I don't think I had like some crazy, amazing education, but I feel like I was taught to think
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
critically think.
Mhm.
And I think, especially in the age of AI, I think that's going to be, the most important skill, period, bar
Right.
none. Right.
Mhm.
And it's a thing that I think is not taught anymore
Yeah, right. Uh-huh.
In
either.
fact, avoided, if
It
I can say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think so. And so I think back and I'm like, "Well, how in the heck did I, like, learn that?" And again, I don't know that it was in school. I think that was more of, the way that I was brought up,
Yeah.
with, again, in my family, my father being an entrepreneur, and, and I
Mhm.
think instilling kind of this, like, "Hey, you gotta, you gotta learn how to think and assess things." And so really, I think, now fast forward to today, and that's the thing I cherish the most is, being able to critically think, and not just, uh, take things, at face value, all
Mhm.
the time. And again, in the age of AI, I think it's insanely important now. We don't even know what the heck is
Yeah.
real anymore,
Yeah.
Right.
right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a scary point.
Well, I think the scary thing is, like what you said, people outsourcing their critical thinking.
yes,
Mhm.
I'll just have chat think for me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, we're giving up so much sovereignty in that, right? And we don't even know it.
yeah. Well, and it's tough because I mean these tools are, they're so ubiquitous,
Mhm.
and I use them, you guys use them, everything, but it's almost like you need to know where those limits are, and you also, need to know at what point, do you trust, and then, there's a lot of verify, right?
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
that's the other aspect.
Mhm.
It's the
And
whole
then what are you using to verify? Because the thing that you're using to
right,
verify,
Right.
who's verifying that? So it's
right.
an endless
Well, and part of that I think is, even the self-education, with AI tools, it's like, yes, you have access to, at your fingertips to, the most, compute and the most, information that, humans have ever had
mhm.
access to. But at the same time, it's like, I feel it's important, as much as I can, listen to podcasts, audiobooks, to, do deep dives into subjects that I'm
Yeah.
interested
Yeah.
in so that I have a baseline
Yeah.
of knowledge to
Mhm.
kind of be able to parse then, that information,
Yeah.
as it's coming from AI or other sources.
So here's the other thing. I'm curious where you land on this. The validation that you get from AI, right?
Yeah.
Um,
You did great.
it
It wants to please
my
you.
AI thinks I'm the best writer that's ever walked the earth, right? But what role does validation have in your life, as a human, critical thinking, and now the I guess I'll call it validation on demand from these tools?
Yeah, I think it's a tough thing to navigate. I really do. Like you said, AI thinks you're, the best
Yeah,
thing since sliced
right.
bread, right?
Mhm.
And that's intoxicating a
Yeah,
bit, right?
yeah,
If it was coming from another human being, it's intoxicating,
right.
Right.
right? So, now something that, kind of knows you just as intimately well as anybody and is like, "No, you're amazing. Like, you got it." And
It's crazy. Well, can you imagine the youth growing up today with chat in their pocket?
it's scary.
It's a little scary.
No, it's scary, but again, I think it just goes back to just having some awareness and caution, going back to the critical thinking, understanding that this is the way that these models work. This
Mhm.
is kind of the default state, and to not get sucked into that. And then if you've use AI tools enough, and you realize that that's happening, then you start to use it maybe a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And then of course there's prompts and things that you can do to
Mhm.
basically
Mhm.
force it to be like, no,
Keep it real with you.
yeah, keep it real. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not all that. I know nothing.
Right,
And,
yeah.
and I
Yeah.
and I need proof and sources and
Yeah.
all the rest of it.
So I want to circle back to something you said earlier about people, because I think we're kind of on that tangent right now, right? Validation from a human can be intoxicating, right? Surrounding yourself with the right people is important. What qualifies someone to be your friend?
Oh, well, I mean, somebody that will call me on my bullshit.
Mm.
I mean, period. I don't
Mhm.
I don't like yes people around me. I want to be challenged. I
Mhm.
always do. I think ultimately like that's how you grow. And if I have people around me that aren't willing to challenge me, challenge my thoughts, my opinions, that's like kind of a red flag.
Yeah, like,
And
where's your brain at?
yeah,
Yeah.
well, and are we truly friends if you're just gonna agree with me all the time? Do you want something from me? All right. And I
Mm.
think this is something, certainly if you run an organization, have business success or, success in various fields, you really start to question, your relationships and friendships because so many people want things from you.
Mhm.
How do
Right.
you tell?
Well, yeah, I don't think I've been the best judge all the time as I think back historically. So I think
Good
maybe
point.
there's some more work to be done.
Yeah.
But again, I think it just goes back to what we're talking about. It's somebody that's willing to kind of challenge, my own beliefs and everything. I appreciate that, and I'm like, okay, if you were. If you were just trying to, agree with me and everything, maybe there's some ulterior motives.
Right.
But
Right.
again, I think I'm still trying to figure out how to
Yeah.
parse
Well,
that.
and I think a piece of that is like, is this person trying to make me my better self, or are they just trying to resist what I'm saying?
Well,
Right.
and the other thing that I think about, people I surround myself. I have a very small circle, and I keep it that way on purpose because
Yeah.
ultimately, I think, you end up becoming, the company that you keep,
Right.
and
Mhm.
so
Yep.
so I've really taken that to heart,
Mhm.
and and kind of do some self checks sometimes and
Mhm.
go,
Yeah.
is this, you know, is this really, reflective of who I am or who I want
Mhm.
to be? And in many cases, when the answer is no, it's not easy.
Yeah.
But you,
Mhm.
you kind of have to create that distance.
I mean,
So
that sounds like something that you're actively working on and you prioritize, because you said something earlier about you attract problems, right? So
You're self-aware.
what's that all about? Like, what's that journey been like?
Oh man. Well, am I saying when I track problems? I don't know if it's track problems or more like, I don't run from, things that are hard.
Mm.
Right, in
Mhm.
situations that are difficult. Maybe even run to them sometimes. But again, and even something you kind of triggered something earlier when you were talking about growing up and being the oldest and being the protector and all that stuff, and
Mhm.
and, and it's got me thinking actually that I can now think of various ways that has played out
Mm.
in
You were
in
attracted to people that you needed to
that,
protect or
that, that,
something?
yeah,
Mhm.
I feel like, okay,
Mhm.
hey, I can help in some way, or,
Yeah.
and again, that doesn't always work out. Certainly, I think in maybe some of my romantic relationships, that was not maybe the
Right.
right
Yeah.
path.
Well, people are
But,
mirrors, right? And so you're seeking that. If you're, does that make sense? Like you want the same thing that you're giving. Do you see
Gotcha.
yourself like
Yeah, so naturally, if I'm the one, trying to provide solutions, then you gotta have
pursuing
somebody that has a problem,
it?
right? Like, that's the other side of that mirror.
Uh-huh.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
Alright, I gotta
yeah,
maybe,
yeah.
rethink that
So
whole strategy. This is turning
this
into
is therapy, right?
yeah, like, psychological, stuff here. I
Oh,
like it.
yeah.
I'm the same way though. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
don't worry, guys. I'm your friend. I'll tell you what it is.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah.
worry.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So, how do you self reflect? Is it through meditation? Is it through talking? Like, how do you self reflect every day or maybe a week? Or, like,
Mhm.
what does that look like to you?
Yeah, so, on the meditation front, I mean, I don't have any kind of like, crazy protocol that I'm super religious about, but I always, leave time, at, usually, the end of the day, sometimes I am super motivated, it'll be the beginning of the day and, working out and stuff, but I always try to leave time at the end of the day, to at least just reflect on, you know, kind of what happened today,
Hmm.
what worked, what didn't, think a little bit about, maybe how I can do better the next day.
Yeah.
But I do leave time every single night to do a whole lot of nothing besides thinking.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's not a lot of time.
Critical thinking.
Yeah, critical
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah.
But again, just kind of replaying,
Hmm.
the day out and going like, is that, was I successful? And not in a, did I close a deal? Did I make money? But like, am I true to like, who I am and who
Yeah.
I want to be?
So important.
Do you visualize like your future? And if so, do you have one that you like find is on loop?
Yeah, I think I used to do that more than I do now, and this goes back to being present. Um, what I found in the past is, certainly like visualizing a future and and going for a goal. I mean, I still set goals,
Mhm.
but what I've realized is that every time that I've thought that, hey, this is the path to get to this end place or this goal, it literally never turns out that way.
That is what Forbes says
Like,
about manifestation,
yeah,
right? You
it
said
it it never will turn out that way.
yeah.
So I've just given up on going like, "Hey, this is gonna be the path,"
Mhm.
right? Hey, if I want abundance, if I want good health, those are all great things, and I do things on a daily basis in the present and small things to have those building blocks to eventually get there. But I've given up on trying to figure out how it's gonna happen.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
found that the more I was focused on how it was going to happen, the more I messed my own
Yeah,
stuff up,
yeah,
right? It was like, I just got to go with the flow, and the opportunities present themselves in weird ways, like something that I've been focused on lately is saying yes to things that I normally wouldn't
mm,
because I'm like, there's going to be a bit somewhere on the other side of this, right? And so I'm curious, like help me out because, you know, I want to have that flexibility, but at the same time, as an entrepreneur, like I have so many obligations and I have my routines and my rituals and the things that I'm accountable and responsible for, but I'm still finding this urge to carve out, I don't know, wouldn't even call it free time, but like almost adventures.
yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think that's key, and I wish I had a better memory and could remember where, which self-help book or which author, or, what,
Take your
who
pick.
has said this. Yeah, yeah, they're probably on this shelf. But there was one thing I was reading, and again, don't remember which, where somebody talking about how you should spend at least a third of your time in with unstructured
Absolutely.
Mm.
That's
activities
where
or
we
time.
thrive. We
And
thrive on the edge of chaos. You don't want to fall
yeah,
into it, but you want to hold on to those rails and watch it.
yeah.
That's kind of how I live.
Well, and yeah, and the thing is, I think that's something that, at least for me, that it took me a long time to learn that. Like I used to be
Mhm.
the, hey, grind it out, work 16 hours a
Yeah.
day,
Every minute of my day
every
is
minute.
scheduled.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I mean meetings just from the moment I wake up, the morning,
Uh-huh.
went to sleep, and and there's never enough hours in the day, and
Right.
and look,
Yeah.
and the truth is, there never will be,
Yeah,
Mhm.
right?
yeah,
No
yeah.
matter how busy you are, how many meetings you schedule. So, it's and to your point, it's like there's so much value in that unstructured times, and the things that you ultimately uncover and get out of that, I think far supersede whatever meetings you had to forego or
Yeah.
other things. And then that also goes back, kind of bringing it full circle when we talked about efficiency. It's also one of the reasons
Mhm.
why I try to create efficiency in my life,
To carve out the time.
to make sure
Uh-huh.
that I have
Mhm.
that time,
Mhm.
right? That I can dedicate, to, again, whether they be hobbies or other things outside of the everyday grind grind of, running and building a
It's the
business.
foundation of LeGrand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's important. You don't want to lose yourself.
What's your hobby that you would attribute some of your breakthroughs to?
Oh, I love just getting out in nature.
Okay.
I mean, clearly I like getting out in the sun.
Yeah.
You can't tell by the skin tone. But yeah, no, I love being outside. It's something that's so rejuvenating in every way.
Mhm.
So I take any of those opportunities. So, growing up, I was big into mountain biking,
Mhm.
and then into hiking. I love kind of, everything from, off-roading and, Jeeps and, vehicles like that to again, just, being out on a hike in the middle of the mountains.
Yeah.
I can relate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing a rim to rim
Oh, how are
at the
you?
end of May, and so I'm stretching those bones right
Okay.
now.
No, that's a tough one, and you're doing the end of May,
Yeah.
which that's rolling the
It
dice
gets
on
really
on
hot
how
down
hot
there.
it's gonna
It
be
it
at the
gets
bottom.
really hot. Yeah, it'll be my second time doing it, so
Okay.
I'm ready to just do it.
Well, I've done I did a rim to rim to rim, once,
Ah.
Wow.
and, I was younger and in better shape,
Yeah.
that is one of the hardest things physically I've ever done.
Yes.
That's a tough,
Yes.
tough
I'm
hike.
excited for this one though, because the last one I did it in 19 hours, 26 miles in 19 hours, and it just destroyed my legs and my body. So this time I'm going slow and I'm having
Yeah.
fun and I'm just gonna take it
Yeah,
easy.
see, you're the smart one. I was the dummy when I did it, and I was like, "No, I'm gonna go as fast as possible."
Right. Why do
And
we do that?
yeah.
It's so weird. It's like no one's pushing us to do it.
Yeah, well, and I said it's artificial. It was like, 24 hours rim to rim to rim, it's 47 miles,
Yeah.
46 miles. And it almost broke me
Yeah.
physically.
Why
Mhm.
do humans do that? Why do we push our bodies to the edge?
So I think that actually, I mean, humans are wired for, how do I put it? Uh, to suffer. I mean, we
Mhm.
really are. Like, if you think about it, what you get at the end of suffering
Mhm.
is, something that you can't recreate any other way. And especially I think in a physical sense, the runner's high.
Yeah.
Like, right? I hate running.
Mhm.
Like, it
Yeah.
sucks
Yeah.
100%
Yeah.
of the time.
Mhm.
And afterwards, I feel like $1,000,000.
Yeah.
So
So what
That's so true.
I would challenge that to say that, because like you, all my hobbies hurt, you know, right? Like I seek out the punishment, but I think it's because I'm actually wired for comfort. I'm wired for my brain to not want to struggle, to take it easy, to, eat the cheap stuff, get the cheap dopamine, right? Like, and so I think the reason I get a runner's high is because I have disobeyed my operating system.
So now you can appreciate it more, the lazy time, or not lazy time, but
Well, the brain is like, "Hey, man, like this wasn't the plan." Like,
Okay,
I mean,
okay.
it's wired to like save calories, right?
yeah, no, it's true.
Right?
Yeah.
Like it's just focused on survival. So, like, I think you get rewarded when you rebel.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
guess
I
that's one
can
way to
see
put it.
that.
Yeah.
I think the way I see it is like I like to see like how far I can push my body, and then it just feels so good, like superhuman. Does that make sense? Like,
Well, yeah, and I think another aspect of it, and you're gonna experience this here shortly in your rim to rim hike. It's also like a sense of achievement, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
One of my
absolutely.
favorite things when I hike is, and one of the things I love about being in Arizona is we have the mountains, and
Yeah.
the trails I pick, I'm just like, it better get me to the top,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Because like, I don't
Right.
want to just circle the mountain. Like, I'm already on it. Like, hey, I want to
Right.
get to the top, right? I want to be
Yeah.
there looking down. I achieved something. It's that sense of achievement and
Absolutely.
fulfillment.
I live right behind a mountain. And so there's 5 peaks. And I'm always like, okay, I'm just going to do one. And then I feel so good at the top. I'm like, all right, I'm going to do another one. And then by the end of it, I did all 5, right? And then it just feels so good.
How do you feel coming down from the top of the mountain?
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like a sense of, I kind of put it, going up is always a struggle. I always pick really hard mountains. So, I put, pushing myself. And so kind of on the way down, it's more of like hey, you knew you got this. You knew you had it. Like,
Mm.
you're not, as out of shape as you think you are,
Yeah. Mhm.
and so it's this, I don't know. It's kind of like this reflection. It's time to reflect in that you really can achieve. And like I said, I definitely when I hike, I try to push myself, and So yeah,
Mhm.
so I'm very jealous of your trip coming up. That sounds like an amazing challenge.
Right. Well,
Mhm.
and you just striked an idea of just being extraordinary, right? Like the ordinary person would take a 1 mile hike. The extraordinary would say, "Let's go to the freaking Grand Canyon and do it." Right? It's like that mindset of just
I
being
think the
extraordinary.
ordinary person isn't even hiking.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, that
I
is
think if you go out and you still do a mile and that's pushing it for you, I think that's
yeah.
extraordinary.
Yeah.
I think, and I'm gonna ask you a question about how you define extraordinary, but I think extraordinary is relative, and it's doing something of like, "Okay, I didn't think I could do it."
Yeah. I think you actually hit on something in terms of, extraordinary being relative.
Mhm.
If, you know, say you're a Iraq war vet and you don't have your legs, you know, like having, artificial legs and hiking a mile might be the most extraordinary thing
Right,
ever,
right.
Absolutely.
right?
Mhm, mhm.
Whereas for us doing it, that's like, what are you doing? Like you're lazy, right?
Mhm.
So,
Right.
Right.
so again, I think it is relative, and ultimately, I think that's the whole value prop. I think it's is challenging yourself, achieving something, whatever that is, and for people, it might be something super simple that, the average person's like, "Well, that's not a big deal," but it is to you, and
Right.
and I think that's like it's a character building thing, and I don't think there's enough of it.
Yeah.
Mm.
I really think that if
Mhm.
more people would seek out those challenges, and it's almost those building blocks, and over time, you build this confidence and this the confidence in yourself to achieve it, and then the bigger things all of a sudden become much more,
Mm.
accessible and
Yeah.
reasonable to
Your
to to go
ceiling
after. Yeah,
keeps
your
getting
ceiling goes
higher.
higher, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there something that sticks out to you as like a big moment in your hero's journey for building confidence?
You know, um, when I think about building confidence, again, I just think back to my experiences. There's been several times in my life when I've, whatever, been in a situation that I thought I would never would be, like, in a positive way, like, "Oh, wow, I didn't think I would, be here with this person, or,
Right.
this company, or, in this role." And, there's this kind of this imposter syndrome,
Mhm.
that I think is very common. I've
Yeah.
I've certainly felt it. But, at the same time, I think it's a realization that, like, I mean, like, we're all humans, we're all fallible, even that person that is, sitting in whatever seat that you wish you had, really they're no different than you.
Yeah.
And it's really a matter of, the small choices that you make, whether you can achieve and be that. And so I think, I think it's that realization of like, hey, I can do anything that I really truly want to. And if I haven't achieved what I want, ultimately, maybe it's because I don't really truly want it
Yeah.
deeply, right?
Mhm.
Because I think we all get and achieve, those things that we truly desire, because
Absolutely.
you will do the work, you will, do the things on a daily basis,
Mhm.
to put yourself in that situation to win or
I think,
succeed.
like, I mean, you're just speaking to me right now, totally. Like, I everyone wants to be the best at something, right? And then you look at the cost, like the stories of the people who were the best at something, like a Kobe, or a Jordan or a Tiger, and I think to myself, like, no, I'm cool being like well rounded.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. You're
like,
like, "Do I really wanna swing a club, like, 20 hours a day?"
yeah.
And, do I wanna, and it's true,
Mhm.
and again, I think that's where, again, being realistic of like, "Hey, what is it you really want?
Yeah.
Do you wanna be the richest person in the world?
Right. And
Right.
how bad do you want it?
Go
Mhm.
look at what the richest people in the world, look at what their lives are like.
Yeah.
Look at what they had to put in."
Hmm.
That's, by the way, that's the minimum that you need to do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
Like,
Hmm.
and I think that, ultimately that's where, again, I think once you realize that, it's much easier to then figure out, okay, what is it that I really want? Like you said, I'd rather be well-rounded, you know,
Right. Yeah.
you know,
I was living my dream on tour, opening up for this comedian, and just on the road every week, right? Like big theaters, And I was like, this is the dream, And then I don't know, halfway through the year, I was like, this is not my dream. This was the dream, and now I'm looking at what it takes, and I'm
But
like,
that's an accomplishment in
I'm
itself, right?
out.
To get to that point to realize
yeah.
maybe this isn't it.
I think you have to do it to realize it's not
Mhm.
what you want. You know, like for example, with dating, like you have to date to figure out what you don't want.
That's a
You know?
very
Exactly. Yeah.
unfortunate truth, but yes, it is definitely true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Well, but I think, I think is part of that, it also, I think it takes a lot of character to then go, okay, I'm going to shift gears now
Yeah.
because that isn't, I think a lot of people still go, oh man, like, this isn't my dream. Like, okay, I, went to medical school for all these years. Now I'm working
Right.
80 hours a week. I don't have any time for my family. My
Right.
health is suffering,
Yeah.
Mhm.
but like, I'm a doctor and I'm going to,
I told everyone I was going to be a
that's
doctor.
what I was gonna
Yeah.
do, and I gotta
Mhm.
please my family and
Mhm.
whatever, and I think that a lot of people end up, unfortunately, living their entire lives, right, trying to still
Yeah.
chase the dream or,
Mhm.
that was what I was supposed to do or society or my parents or whoever
Mhm.
told me, and I think it takes a lot more character to, like, as you said, go, I think it's time to shift
I'm
gears."
good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Was there something that you were supposed to do?
Oh gosh, yeah, a lot of things. So, gosh, if I think back, uh, I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. It
Mhm.
took me a decade of working for other people uh, to get the wherewithal to actually do it
It's
and
what I
try
call
it.
unemployable, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I'm like pissed off enough bosses that I'm like, I probably can't have one. I think I need to be the boss.
Yeah.
So, but again, is amazing realization in that. So yeah, I mean, I think I think for me it was again, I had to experience that before I could,
Yeah.
figure out that, okay, this is the journey.
Mhm.
So again, it was like in my head, I knew I wanted it, but I had to really
Yeah.
experience the other side of it to go,
Right.
oh no, I really want this. And in fact, I might not be successful at all in life
If
If I'm not.
if
Yeah.
I don't try to go this
Yeah.
entrepreneur route. And honestly, I think that was like the final push to, kind of like,
Mhm.
you know, get me out in the deep end.
Yeah.
It's almost
And
like paying your dues to become your higher self,
yeah,
right? I mean,
yeah,
that's the way you look at it.
I think so.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
So,
What are you curious about?
oh my gosh, what am I not curious about, man? You should see my YouTube. It's like
All over
all
the place?
these crazy rabbit holes I go down, and I think I've always, since I was a child, I used to go to the library and max out the amount of
I
books.
love that.
I
I mean,
love it.
literally, I go like every 3 days, and I just read voraciously through different subjects and things that I was into, and then of course, with the internet, kind of did the same thing
Mhm.
as I grew up. And so I still find myself in that space. And so like, yeah, sure. I am learning a lot about missiles and
Mhm.
defense
Right.
and
Uh-huh.
war and, all these things. It's a whole different world than, the private sector where I spent most of my time and career. But, I'm really into, things like longevity and
Mhm.
health and the foods that we put in our body and
Yeah.
how that affects us uh all those things I'm super into, and part of it I think is you get older, and as you have aches and pains and injuries you realize like your health is everything. Like
Right.
if
Mhm.
you don't have that,
Mm.
whatever other business things you want to do or you want to achieve, like it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
So
Your health is your wealth.
that's exactly it. So I've definitely, I think, put a lot more emphasis on that. And that's also created a lot more balance in my life
Sure.
as well, right?
Mhm.
Making sure I got to get my steps in, like I
Right.
gotta, gotta go hit the gym. I gotta,
Mhm.
eat right most of the time. So yeah, so that's something I've really, been more of a kind of a recent thing for me.
I like that you said most of the time. What's your cheat food?
Ooh.
Oh man, I am. Like, I'm a sucker for ice cream.
Oh,
Like, that's
really?
like,
Okay, I
I
didn't
can
see that
like
one coming.
yeah,
What's
Yeah.
your
no.
favorite flavor?
Oh, anything with like peanut butter, like
Oh.
I'm like obsessed with.
All right.
But no, it's oh gosh, ice cream's a tough one for me. It just
Yeah?
is
He's
like
gonna go get ice cream
I,
after
I
this.
can be like hardcore, like, going, keto or, carnivore, whatever. And man, if there's like a bucket of ice cream nearby, like I'm screwed. I just got to keep it like far away from
Yeah.
me.
Okay.
So, but yes, that would be the cheat food.
I
All
love
right.
it. You've given so much really good advice already, but we ask this question to everyone that comes on Extraordinary Stories. If there was one piece of advice that you could give our listeners that they could act on today to be more extraordinary, what would it be?
Ah, man, I think for me, the answer is, uh, you know, go with your gut, trust your gut. Your subconscious knows already what you're supposed to be doing,
Mhm.
and you just need to listen to it. And every time that I've done that, it's never steered me wrong, and conversely, so many times in my life, I've, not, and I've tried to lead with my head or with logic or other things,
Right.
and the opportunities and the outcomes have not been anywhere near as good. So, it's trusting yourself. There's something deep inside you that already knows,
Mm.
the
Yeah.
journey that you should be on, and listen to that.
You're your own North Star.
Exactly. That's a perfect way to put it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else?
No, I
Okay.
love the
Okay.
advice.
Yeah. No, great. Well, this has been fantastic. And yeah, awesome conversation. You guys are incredible people. And outside of this podcast, it's love to stay connected for sure.
Oh, well,
Sure.
thanks. Yeah, we appreciate it. You can learn more about the Extraordinary Network at extraordinary.network. It's a new thing. I had such a rhythm before. It's extraordinary.network. Yeah, hey, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.